or that a rectangle?
A
That's the
rectangle,
question
I mean.
that's the question
Uh,
I always ask my 4.5-year-old. Square or rectangle? It's like, yes. We are live. You just caught us talking about squares and rectangles. And it's Witz and Weiss here talking human. And we've got big topic, big topic in the United States. I think the UK has got some really big challenges going on with what's happening with their currency and interest rates. So it translates directly into the companies we work with, Greg,
mhm.
because you're seeing it on your end, right?
Yeah, so we started the conversation with, today's episode. We're getting into the businesses and entrepreneurs and what's happening, with the future, right? And at least in my clients, what we're starting to have the conversation is the restructuring and the reduction of budgets, right? Which is never a good thing to be thinking about or getting into, but this now brought up the conversation of like, hey, businesses over the next 12 to 18 months are going to have to really weather some potential bad, difficult times, right? And what can we do to make sure that we're prepped and ready and going to be able to navigate these upcoming waters? So yeah, Mike, you're a business owner. I'm a business owner. We're both entrepreneurs. What are your thoughts about the next, call it 12 to 18 months?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because my background's Wall Street. So I started in '87 in the stock market, stockbroker. Then I managed money. Then I had a wealth management company, a fund of funds. I had my own investment advisor. So I spent a lot of time in the markets. Um, from a there's really only one rule that goes along with the fact that we're all going to die.
Mhm.
Well, maybe if that rule might be changed in the future with Mashiach, and we're all going to pay taxes.
Right.
That one's more and more true because these bank accounts not paying taxes don't work anymore. But the other one is basically a correlation between asset pricing and interest rates.
Mhm.
And I'm a little pissed at myself because I know this and I see this. I've seen this movie over and over again, and that's how you get wisdom. Is just by being around long enough to see cycles, and then they repeat. So here's the rule: interest rates go down, asset classes go up. What's asset classes? Real estate, stocks. In this particular round, we had a brand new asset class called digital assets, Bitcoin. So
Yeah.
you saw over the last 8 years with the interest rates at the lowest rate ever, everything was up. That's changed. So now interest rates up, asset classes down. We've got the Fed fighting to control inflation because can destroy an economy. So that's their intention. If they put us into a recession, that's like the side impact. It's nowhere nearly as important as them in taming inflation. So we're in this process now, and as you and I are seeing, like business and companies are trying to say, okay, I don't think we any of us have felt the impact today business wise, because I think businesses are still doing fine. Some of the earnings they're reporting are down or slightly down, but it's not like, okay, we made 20% less this month than last. Now,
Mhm.
so from smart business people preemptively try to say, okay, if we are going to do 20% less over the next 6 months, like what do we do today? So we're proactive versus reactive. I
Mhm.
think that's really the big conversation. To me, uh, interest rates are still going higher, and
Mhm.
assets classes are going to go down, and we're going to end up with a much slower economy. So depending on your business and how cyclical it is, everyone's going to be impacted. You're starting to
Mhm.
see it now. The reason
Mhm.
why I talk about the stock market when I talk about all this stuff, because the stock market's a leading indicator. And
For
right now
sure.
you're seeing all the home builders down big. And, because people, it's cost you $1,000 more with your mortgage than it did, 9 months ago.
Mhm. In some
Basically,
cases, even more.
yeah.
Right. as you said, interest is going up and up and up. And yeah, I think in regard to organizations being proactive and making sure that they could sort of think ahead, you're starting to see this again, reduction or restructuring in some capacity, and reduction in budget. In fact, I had a client. The client called. We were supposed to do an engagement, and we're still doing the engagement, but it shifted. Right, we're reducing some of the engagement in order to reduce some of the budget and the cost. And I think, again, one of the things that we started the conversation with is what do we need to do in order to make sure that we are prepared and ready to navigate these upcoming waters. So, Mike, seeing what you're seeing, let me ask you: you're a business owner. I mean, you're growing, you're moving. What do you think you need to do in order to be ahead in 2023, 2024?
Okay, so this is actually, with Talking Human with Witz and Weiss, we talk about real shit. So let's talk about something that I'm doing proactively, and then maybe you can help me from a human standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So the company I have, which is anyway, we build online education platforms, and we manage LinkedIn profiles and help people grow their business through LinkedIn. That business is doing very well, so we keep growing every month. And with the growth, because it is it's a 2-year-old business, and I'm making sure we get client results, I'm hesitant to really focus on optimization, and I have a lot more people
Mm-hmm.
deployed doing a lot of things very manual to make sure we focus on client results. And in the last 30 days, I probably didn't do this well, based on your advice to me, but I asked everyone in the company uh, to bill the company 10% less than they did the month before. So I didn't tell them necessarily to work 10% less.
Mm-hmm.
They could work the same and just say, okay, instead of getting, you know, $2,000 for the month, I'll get 1,800.
Mm-hmm.
Or they could work 10% less hours. I didn't tell anyone what to do, but I said that's the focus. So the 2-week cycle came in, and with Rodrigo, who's my CEO, we looked at it, and some were down 12%. So on
Mm-hmm.
average, it was pretty good. So we're
Mm-hmm.
getting the next cycle coming in, because every 2 weeks, and I feel like it needs to be done again,
Yeah.
because my focus is, I've got to make sure that we are still focusing on client results, but we're also getting in a cash flow position. So what we have, there's a buffer.
Mm-hmm.
So if things do slow down in 30 or 60 days, and we're averaging 10 new accounts a month, and now it's a little tougher and it's 5, and we always have attrition every month, at least we've got things in position where it's like, okay, that's fine, like we anticipated it, and we'll be able to adopt,
Right.
versus not doing anything, and all of a sudden 1 month you just have half the new clients, and
Mm-hmm.
you have your attrition, and all of a sudden you're underwater, because we're
Right.
at that
Right.
threshold now where we've grown revenues a lot, but also have grown the expenses a lot, so it's a good
Right.
number. But it's not like I have 20% margins now. I don't.
Right.
So what are your thoughts from a expert? Because I want everyone, the feedback the first time around was actually very positive. It shocked Rodrigo, because he's like, wow, people
Mm-hmm.
really, I have some people that have been with me for a half a decade, some
Right.
more actually, and they were very thankful. And I said, look, this is our entire income. We have a lot of people from foreign countries, in India and Pakistan and the Philippines and Costa Rica, where it's a good job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what are your thoughts on from a from an expert
Yeah.
to me
So,
as a client.
so,
Yeah.
here, first thought is you're at that threshold from like you've been around for 2 years, you're moving into year three, you're at that next tipping point as a business, right? There's that saying, right? You need to make it to the first 3 years, and what happens now is, as you said, you start to build some of those now operational costs, or your costs start to rise in order to start to or continue to manage and build the business, right? It's a very normal stage. I think it's great that what you said. People were motivated to support it. It goes to show that you're operating in a community, right? And I think the other side to that coin is: do we either take out one or two salaries, or does everyone take a little bit of a hit? And I did that early pandemic, right? I mean, I think a lot of companies did. We took a shared sort of loss. Um,
You
I
did
think
it.
if
You did it. I didn't think of it like that actually.
yeah,
Versus just saying, okay, if one person goes, we shift a little of
it'll
the
work,
work and reallocate the work amongst
mm,
people. So
right?
that's one way, or everyone takes the burden. That's interesting. I
Right.
didn't think of it like that.
Right. Which is, and Mike, I would assume that this isn't forever that you're doing a reduction in costs with like salaries. It's a temporary um, solution for sustaining a positive future, right? I think that's the ultimate goal, or
Yeah,
not
but this
goal,
month, yeah, because this month I already told the team, leave me alone. I'm going to sell like hell.
right?
So
Right,
you know,
right.
if I give
And
50%
that's true.
more,
Your business and my business are quite similar, right? If we're not continually selling, we're not in this like ongoing. You sell once and that's it. It's always filling the hopper. And I mean, we might argue that that's with every type of sale, but with our specific businesses, like with us being at the front end of it, you need to, right? Okay, so I think that's a good thing. I think the next question is from a budgeting standpoint, if you need to do another round, the question is what does that next round look like? Is it like a straight across 15% for everyone? Is it 10% for everyone? Is it 20% for everyone? So that's the first sort of question you got to ask. Um, or it's who's performing and who's not, man. In a lot of cases, when you need to trim some of that call it fat, and not that anyone is not. We don't want to give them the best opportunity, but if you look at if you were to look at your group and be like, all right, if we were to remove headcount, what would that look like for the remaining balance of the people? In a lot of cases, people will take on more and work harder, but hey, that's kind of the name of the game, right? So I think my advice to you, and maybe this is the point of all this, it's really important that you communicate. You communicate the reason we're doing this. You communicate, what the exercise and the purpose of doing this is. You communicate sort of the fact that you had like that you're thinking like, hey, we got to make some choices. This is where it's at, and you loop people into the reasons of the decision and the direction. And at that point, you've done your ultimate job. You've made the decision as the leader. You've communicated it as the leader. You followed up with everyone as the leader, and that's it. I think we as leaders have the ultimate responsibility of making some hard decisions in order to look after the greater group.
interesting. Question for you. Thank you. Um, how do you feel about like large organizations probably aren't going to do this, although when you're large and public, then you actually have your financials or for everybody, your
Mm-hmm,
K1s and everything. So there's full transparency when you enter the public market.
mm-hmm,
What do you think about being like, for instance, everything we do all billing through Stripes. So Stripes got great reporting, so you can see year over year we're up 40%, and
mm-hmm.
from 2 years we're up like 1,800%. Do you feel it's valuable as part of the to show the trend in the story, so people they feel like, oh, I'm being included, versus just a story with no data and just kind of telling them what's happening?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So I'll share a personal story, and maybe that'll help sort of answer the question, or maybe that'll give us some insight. So I used to run the company Open Book Management,
Mm,
and what Open Book Management was the only thing people didn't get to see were salaries. but we were complete every Monday, right? Pulled the books out and said, hey, this is the expenses, and here's the revenue and stuff. And I thought it was brilliant. I thought this would include people, it would create buy-in in the community. This is shared responsibility. I'm not the sort of just manager to say, do this, and these are my decisions. We as a
Right.
group will make these decisions.
Right.
Um, when it was good times, it created stress for people, right? Because, everyone wants more. But when it was bad times, right, and you would bank on the fact that, okay, right, you saw the upside of things, and now, here's the other side of things, which is the downside of things, people would be appreciative of being inside that knowledge. But what happened was people became very insecure, right? I had people resign. I had people really panicked. And in my effort to share the insight of what's happening financially with the business, always with the conversation of don't worry, it will always be fine. We'll work it out, blah, 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 blah. But for example, no raises, and this is why we're doing reductions and blah, blah, blah. The more detailed I was about those numbers, the more stress it put on. And what I realized out of this entire exercise, and this was years ago, was my biggest stress as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, is being the CFO. It's a fucking stressful job. It's stressful managing the money, the cash flow. I hate doing it. I hate doing it, but you have to do it. And it's a burden that sometimes if we share too much of that with our team, we go from trying to promote and help and support and help them understand to actually burdening them as well. So I think it's a very fine line between being able to share the reason you're making this decision and how much data you share around that as well, right?
Super interesting. So I would say totally agree as you shared that because people aren't like people didn't sign up for they signed up for a job. They didn't sign up for stress. And
Correct.
so here's one thing I can share the fact about the stock market, and it's follows through to everything else.
Hmm.
The fear outweighs the gain 10x to 1. So what I
Always.
mean by that is the fear of losing is 10 times more powerful than the fear of gaining. And you see
Hmm.
this. It's the reason why you always see stocks go down so much faster than stocks go up unless it's a takeover. There's a
Hmm.
panic. And that fear, I guess, when you're doing it from a transparent standpoint, open book, and it's not selective, it's sort of global. People don't sign
Hmm.
up for that. Like, why do
Hmm.
they need to know what's happening month to month? They just need they're working hard, and at the end of every 2 weeks, they're going to get what they're supposed to get, and
Correct.
then that's it. And when 5 o'clock rolls around, they're done. They spend their weekends. They come back to work. Why are they being involved with all of this extra?
Correct. Correct. And I got to
So
tell you, listen, early days when I presented this idea, everyone was on board. They were like, "This is fucking amazing." They were like, "I absolutely would love to have this insight." Da da da. Create entrepreneurs now. But it ultimately, to what your point is, it's not what they signed up for.
yeah. Now, what about this whole trend now on TikTok? There's some woman that started a conversation about full transparency in terms of pay. And she's got like 5 million views. And basically, she says, I work for this company and I do this job and I'm getting paid this. And now, from the bottom up, instead of like people's salaries being private, they're trying to expose um, all salaries. And um, there was even a case where I think someone got fired and he put out a warning to anyone looking to take his job that these were his hours, these were his roles, these were his responsibilities, this was
Right.
his pay and his benefits. Don't
Right.
take less and don't do more.
So, what's my thought on that?
Yeah.
So, I think we've got to be very careful. So, for example, this individual got this pay, these benefits, this vacation. This is how much they worked, right? That's who they were. Now, if they got fired, well, that might acknowledge the fact that they didn't do enough work for or produce enough results for what they got paid. So the argument is skewed right off the bat, right? So anyone that would take that advice is a little narrow sighted to think that. You know, I think knowing salaries is quite general. You go to LinkedIn and say, all right, this title, this industry, give me my salary range. It says, well, this is the range. And I think all of that is defined by the different revenues within a business, the different costs, right? So while we might all be in the same industry and we're hiring the same role, my revenue is less than your revenue. So therefore, I can't afford to pay certain salaries for that same type of role, right? So that's it. The other side is this whole exercise of being transparent with salaries. I I think you got to be a pretty strong fucking human being to not feel envious or slighted or um, taken advantage of, right? If you found out your number was less than anyone else's. In fact, it's a stat which is one of the biggest demotivators in a team is where Bill looks over at Bob and they get paid the same amount, but Bob does half the work, right? So Bill sits there going, you know what? This is BS, right? We get paid the same amount, and this individual is doing half the work. It's the same argument on salary, right? All of a sudden, you start to get this out there. You're going to start to evoke a certain reaction from human beings, right? Because are survivalists. They're always going to want more.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Um,
I mean, think about what the number one cause for divorces, right? I don't even think it's like sleeping with another person. I think it's money. I
mhm,
think extramarital. I could be wrong on this. You're a stats person. You'll probably search this right now. But I think the number one reason for divorce is finance.
mhm.
Now, if money messes with our marriages and our partnerships, right? Oh yeah, so marriages. If money messes with business partnerships, right? Because partners now start to fight about money, one partner spending on this and one partner is sort of taking more than that and one takes a longer vacation, creates tension. And now all of a sudden you bring that back to what we spoke about in our exercise to share insight. We end up burdening people with the conversation of money.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
mind-blowing stuff.
I'll give you something that's uh, maybe interesting. So, what the last company I built was with John Asseroff, and one of the programs we built was winning the game of money.
Hmm.
And having been in the money business, like I'm comfortable with money, asking for money, talking about money. But what we began to realize when we started to do the research, and mostly John did on research and stuff, we went through all the limiting beliefs around money, and there were just hundreds of them. And so it's a topic that people organically aren't okay with.
Hmm.
The vast majority of people, whether you grew up and you didn't have money and your parents said, look at those rich kids around the block and their parents, they suck, or even the common thing, money is dirty. Like there
Right.
were literally like 100 of these limiting beliefs that get imparted in. So it's interesting because now we're saying, okay, well, everyone's prepared to handle it, and
Right.
reality is not. So it would be interesting, to do a course about money with an organization that wanted to go in that direction to get everyone at least in a level playing field with a conversation and a framework to deal and think about money.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct. But money is a very sensitive topic. But let's say this. Let's switch gears for a sec. So the negotiation of a salary between an individual and that organization is between them and their organization, right? It's like it's their discussion. I think organizations have a responsibility for paying fair salaries, right? Creating great cultures, creating opportunities to succeed, all that sort of positive responsibility that stuff that we have as an organization. But the door swings both ways, by the way, right? So if we are responsible as an organization for this, then the individual is responsible for delivering, producing results, executing, contributing to the community, adding to the bigger and the greater good. So it's not just a 9 to 5. And I think it becomes the true. We might describe this as the true symbiotic relationship between a team, an employee, and the business, right? Either or. At the end of the day, I think when it comes down to um, back to what we were talking about, open book management, there are some pitfalls to it. And I think, Mike, the original question is how much information do you share? I think you transparently share what's going on. Look, guys, for example, we're making these decisions now because we're preparing for, making sure that we've got a buffer of this amount of time, right? I'm asking everyone to do this for the next period of time, and then we can reevaluate things, right? Look, thank you for all doing this. This is where we're at right now. We're still plotting and we're still moving forward. I think it's more important to have the conversation around, hey, we're sailing through, we're in the weather, we're through the weather. It's like turbulence, right? But what I'm not going to do as the pilot is I'm not going to start screaming out numbers of how fast we're going. And
In fact, they don't give you any information. You're
no,
right.
no, they just tell you, by the way, we're about to hit turbulence. You're like, okay, cool. And then we're in turbulence. We'll let you know once we're out of it. Okay, we're out of turbulence, everyone. And that's the moral of that sort of story, which is we need to approach that with our team members. And then again, I think, there's different individuals within an organization that have more maybe seniority or maturity, or that you would loop in to help with some of these decisions.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think it's a really great conversation today, Greg.
It was. It was. Thanks for sharing what's going on in your world.
Thank you. Thanks for your great tips, and everyone that is watching now. Thanks so much. We've had some good comments come in from Rito jumped in there, and a bunch of other people, and then one that's going to watch it in the replay. Thanks for joining. We're on at 2 Eastern every Monday. Witz and Weiss. Share it, and feel free to contact us during the week with any questions or a topic. Or, hey, if you're like, you know what, you guys are cool and I'd like to jump on and be a guest, hit us up. We're open. This is inclusive, human to human, right?
That's right. On that note, we could give everyone a little preview. We got a guest coming up in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk about what they're doing to build back their culture. It's awesome. Super cool conversation around what they're doing to really contribute to the hybrid environment. What does success look like when individuals are working at home and working remote? And then what does success look like as a team coming together? And what is that balance between that organization? Very, very cool conversation. Another guest coming up, we can talk about creativity. What does it take to be creative in our roles? Super, super, super cool dude. And a few other things coming.
Guests. We have guests coming in.
Yeah.
Let's do it. If you want to be a guest, let us know. And have a great week.
Stay happy, stay healthy, everyone, and we'll see you next week, Talking Humans.
Yes. Thank you.